What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Journey Together set. This is going to be a little bit different than my regular set reviews because I'm not going to be reviewing every single card like I normally do. I'm just going to be touching some of note that I think are a little bit interesting just because the stuff that's really good in this set is really good, and a lot of the other stuff is just kind of, bulk cards. But, before we get into the set breakdown, I'm going to talk about what I think you guys should be picking up, what's going to be good in the meta, all that. But before we get into that, I just want to give a special shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for that additional level of support. It really does mean a lot, and it goes a long way. So thank you guys so much for that. For anybody else, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you want to see in the next video. As well as let me know what you're most excited for with the Journey Together set. Personally, mine is Mamoswine. EX. And also, upcoming soon, we have the Cook-Off Challenge on April 5th and 6th. This is with a whole bunch of different creators. It's hosted by Chef Husky. It's going to be me, a bunch of other YouTubers. We're going to be doing a cook-off tournament style thing. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Be sure to check that out if you're interested. I'll have a link to Chef Husky's channel down in the description, as well as the website I'm using to be able to look at all these cards. But without further ado, the first card I want to look at is Butterfree. This card is bad, but I will probably be using it because it is fun. It has the Scale Hurricane attack where it does 60 times, you get to flip 4 coins, and it does 60 for each heads. But if you flip 2 or more heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed, which is just kind of cute and a little bit fun. So, there's that. We have Parasect. The card doesn't really matter. The first card that's actually important is Lilligant. Lilligant's really interesting because it has the Sunny Day ability where your grass and fire Pokemon, their attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. This is really good. A couple decks that come to mind right now is Flareon, because you get to boost up your damage, as well as having things like Victini to boost it even more, so you're doing like an additional 30. That's actually really, really big. And also cards like the Torterra EX that have been waiting for better grass Pokemon for a long time, and I think that the Lilligant can help it, because one of the issues with Torterra is just its low damage output. Even when you have a full bench, it just doesn't do enough, but this can help kind of push it over the edge, so I'm pretty excited for that. Next up is Maractus. Oops, sorry, I'm getting a bunch of random notifications. I thought my phone was muted. Professional YouTuber, everybody. Maractus, I didn't think this card would be that great. Discussing this, though, I would pick up, 2 copies of Lilligant, 2 copies of Petalil. I'd pick up 2 copies of Maractus as well. I could see it being an interesting tech card, just as kind of something to fix damage numbers, because if this Pokemon is in your active and knocked out by your opponent's active Pokemon, you put 6 damage on the attacking Pokemon. That's pretty good. 6 damage does turn a good amount of things into one-hit KOs if you were just shy. So, if you're in a 2-shot situation, the extra damage could help out. I don't know how much play it will actually see, but I think it could be interesting, especially with the Lycanroc later on in the set that we'll review. So I'd pick up 2 of those. The Carablast and Fungus can be skipped for now. What I do recommend is picking up it. Okay, not necessarily that you have to get this card, but the next card of interest is the Excelgor, where it does 70 damage for 2 energy, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused and poisoned. Switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. This is actually a really interesting attack to have because you can switch it with a couple other cards, considering that it is poisoned, so it plays into that poison box deck pretty well, as well as the Tyranitar later on in the set list we'll talk about, that has the item locking ability, so you're going to be able to get kind of good value out of this card, and having the grass typing is really nice, especially when Charizard becomes more common later on in the future. Just being able to hit for the weakness to get that additional damage as well will be really nice. So I definitely would recommend looking into this card if you play Poison Box style decks. Durant, Virizion, all not that great. The Sprigatito in Masquerada line, I think is okay. You could probably get 1 copy of each and be fine. The Masquerada has an okay ability where once during your turn you may use this ability. If this Pokemon is on the bench, you switch it to the active. This is nice just because you're able to never really get stopped by stall style cards because you're always going to be able to switch into the active. You don't have to worry about getting locked. The problem is that you're just not really doing that much damage because it only does 90 damage. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX, you do 90 more, so you are doing 180. If you're hitting into weakness, then, you know, you're doing reasonable damage, but outside of that, not so much. But it could be okay. Magmortar, getting into the fire Pokemon. Magmortar is pretty cool because we do have the Volcanion later on in the set. And so this has the Magma Surge ability, where during Pokemon Checkup, put 3 damage counters on your opponent's burned Pokemon. This is very similar to Radiant Sneasler, except instead of doing poison damage, you're doing fire damage. And I actually like this card. I think it's kind of interesting. There's some arguments that like you could do this with like a hypotoxic laser, get the extra burn damage and like stuff like that, or not hypertoxic laser, that's the old thing. What is the ace spec? I'm thinking too far back in history. The terrible ace spec that burns and confuses, or burns and poisons, or whatever it does. You could combo that if you're looking for like a dumb rogue meme deck, or combo with like Volcanion. So I think it could be okay. Blaziken EX is our first like legitimately very good card. It has the Overflowing Spirit ability, where once during your turn you can attach an energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, so just generic speeding up of energy acceleration, and it also does have an attack for 200 damage, so it could help clean things up later on in the game. It's only 2 energy, so you can power itself up pretty quickly, but it's really going to just be used as energy acceleration, because as of right now, we're kind of going to go into a much slower meta where we're relying on Crispin and things like that in order to energy accelerate. The game is just going to be in a slower spot overall. So I think with Blaziken EX, we're going to be seeing this card a lot just for its energy acceleration. Also, the water typing is fine. You don't really run into anything that is going to be like taking advantage of that, at least not as of right now. Going into one of our other bigger cards for this set, we have Ends Darmanitan, where I would actually recommend picking up like 2 of these, probably 3, just to be on the safe side. As for Blaziken, I'd pick up like 2 of those. And by the way, if I say like to pick up 2 of like the Blaziken EX, I'm also including Torchic and Chambuskin? Why can I not pronounce that? You're going to want to include those, so it's just like a 2-2-2 line. But I'm not going to say that every single time. Just understand that when I'm talking about Blaziken, you're going to need the other cards as well. But to go back to Ends Darmanitan, it has the Backdraft attack, where it does 30 damage, and then this attack does 30 damage for each energy in your opponent's discard pile. This isn't really great, but it could come up. Really what you want is the Darmanican attack, which does 90 damage. Then you discard all energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is really, really nice. Temporarily, we won't have any form of bench protection in the game, so being able to do 90 and 90 is very, very good. Just being able to snipe something out, knock out the active as well, if you can get this off on like an early attack with your Zoroark, which definitely will be possible. Just being able to snipe a bunch will be really powerful, and again, there's no bench protection in the game right now at the time of rotation, so Ends Darmanitan is going to be a nuisance for a little while until we get the Shaman. Reshiram EX doesn't really matter. Volcanion EX is actually really interesting. It does have the Scorching Steam ability, where once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your active spot, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. That's actually really good. Again, burn is a weird status, but there are ways to buff it, like the Magmortar earlier. But also, just as a little bit of extra damage, one of the things that we'll probably see with this deck is that you'll have your Volcanion, you'll focus on getting that into the active, set the burn for a little bit of additional damage, retreat it out with something like a Latias, be able to set up the poison. So again, it's just a thing in like Poison Box to set up a bit more damage and just get more counters to fix damage numbers. So I think it could be pretty good, and I'm sure it's going to see play. It is seeing some play in City Leagues, but we'll see what happens when it truly comes out. Getting into the water Pokemon, the first main card to look at is Ludicolo. Oh, by the way, Volcanion, I'd probably pick up like 1 or 2 of these, and yeah, I already said 3 for Darmanitan. Ludicolo, you could probably pick up like 1. I don't think it really is going to have much play, but I'd love for it to end up popping off and being better than I thought. I just don't really foresee that to be the case, because it does have the Vital Samba ability where each of your Pokemon in play get 40 plus HP. Unfortunately, it doesn't stack. I wish it did. If it stacked, I think it'd be way, way better. But unfortunately, it doesn't. So, you know, that is what it is. I'm struggling to think of a deck that would really want to do this. Mamoswine would be okay with it, just like the extra 40 HP, but I'm not sure about what the damage numbers will look like when the meta comes around, so I don't know if that's actually even turning like 2 shots into 3. If it does, then it's playable. If it doesn't, then we'll have to wait and see. There's an argument, I guess, you could run this alongside the other stadium, like give yourself some more health, and then try to get out of things that way, maybe. I don't know. Could be worth it. The card I actually really want to talk about is Wailord. Wailord is really, really cool. It has the Hydro Pump attack for 10 damage, plus this attack does 50 more damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. You do need 50. You do need 4 energy attached just to be able to use the attack, so you're automatically going to be doing 210, but this is very similar to like a Chinpow style deck. You're going to be able to just throw a ton of water energy onto it using something like Baxcalibur. Having 240 HP on a basic, or like not a basic, but on a stage 1 single prize deck is very, very good, because there's some, like, that means even with this in the active, Charizard doesn't one-shot you on turn 1. So, or like on its first attack before you take prize cards. So you're going to be able to get the first knockout in a really big way. You're going to be able to knock out most things in the game, and you don't have to worry about even something like the, like Dracopult still doesn't one-shot you unless it's already placed damage counters on you like previously. So you can still eat 1 attack if you're like full health. So that actually is really good. I think this card's going to be very, very powerful. The problem is that we lose Irida, and losing Irida does matter. But I think Wailord is going to be very, very good. So I definitely would recommend picking up a couple of these if you're interested in playing that deck. Going into Lightning Pokemon, we see our first Trainers Pokemon, which is the Iono's Voltorb. I think this card is cute. I think Iono is really bad as a deck type. The problem with the Voltorb is that it only does 20 damage. Had it done 40 or 30 even, it would be in a way better position, because the problem with it is that it's 2 energy, Chain Bolt, 20 damage, and then this attack does 20 more damage for each electric energy attached to your Iono's Pokemon. That, in theory, is fine, but the problem is you need so many energy on board for this attack to really do damage that I just don't think that you're going to be able to do that. Now, there's an argument with a couple other cards that you have, like Belly Bolt and going Electric Generator. Like, you could make it work, but you just need so many energy on board. I don't know how efficient this is really going to be. It is a single prizer, though, so, I mean, there's that. You could kind of argue that you can go to, you could just go, like, 2-2, rather than having to, like, you can go 1 attack in, get KO'd, take the second prize card, and, like, kind of go that way. But even then, I don't know. I don't really think it's that great. Iona's Electrode is funny, because, like, there's ways you could buff your health, and then, so then you go and you use the Heart Pounding Bomb. This Pokemon deals 100 damage to itself. You flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out. I think it'd be pretty interesting if you were able to use that attack twice by, like, buffing your health, surviving your own kind of self-destruct, flipping heads, getting it, putting your opponent maybe in a position where, like, you Iono'd them before, so they don't have a way to attack you. You get to, like, boss something in on your next turn, and then go and Heart Pounding Bomb again and see if you could, like, coin flip. I think that's really memey and fun, so I'll probably try that out. But do I think it'll be good? Probably not. And Joltik is okay. So these ones are optional pickups. I probably wouldn't, but if you wanted to, then you'd probably just go like 4-4. Or, sorry, you'd probably go like 4 Voltorb, 1 Electrode. Would probably be what you'd want to grab. Enge Joltik is interesting because it has the Crackle Shot, where you do 30 damage, and then before doing damage, discard all Pokemon tool cards from your opponent's active Pokemon. If you discard a tool card from this Pokemon this way, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. This is kind of interesting. Tool cards are going to become a little bit more common in the upcoming format, and so this could be nice, as well as just having something else for your Zoroark to be able to use is always nice. And then the added benefit of it like paralyzing your opponent, this means that if you're up against, let's say, one of the random stall decks, right, like the wall decks, they're transitioning to playing the Hero's Cape, and so now you can knock the Hero's Cape off and paralyzing them, kind of giving yourself even an extra turn to work with. So I think it is pretty good, and I would recommend grabbing a couple of those, probably 2, to be able to play in the end deck potentially. Tapu Koko EX is really interesting. I actually like this card a lot. It was pretty underwhelming when I first looked at it, and that's also because it's coming from a starter deck, so that makes sense why. But I actually think this card with Miraidon is very, very good, because it does give you an out to Cornerstone, because it does not have an ability. And it's also not a Terra Pokemon either, so you get past Milotic, and you are hitting that for weakness, so it gives you an out to the Walls deck, at least mostly. You don't have an out to Farigarath, but, you know, you can work around that. One of the other things with this attack that I think is interesting is that you are already playing the Area 0, so you're going to be able to get pretty good damage out of this. It has no retreat cost, so that's going to help you as well. Granted, you are playing Latias, but it's nice to have free retreaters as much as possible. The Belly Bolt for Iono is pretty interesting. That being said, I think you only need like 2 Tapu Koko, though. I don't think you need too many. Iono's Belly Bolt EX, then it does have an interesting ability that will help the Iono's engine, where as often as you like during your turn, you can attach a basic electric energy from your hand to one of your Iono's Pokemon. This is nice because if you go Generator early and you reshuffle, and because you're playing a whole bunch of energy, you end up with them in your hand, you are able to use this Pokemon to get them out of your hand, and that could benefit you. So that's at least something, but I don't really think the Iono deck will be that strong to begin with, so, you know, we'll have to wait and see. You will have as well the Kilowattrel, where you get the Flash Draw, so you can discard an electric energy from this Pokemon in order to use the ability. Once during your turn, you draw cards until you have 5 cards in hand, or 6 cards in hand. This is actually pretty interesting of a combination, because in theory you could get a whole bunch of energy on your, like in your hand, use your Belly Bolt in order to spread all those energies around. Just put 1 on the Kilowattrel, put the rest on like Voltorb, or even stack them onto the Belly Bolt if you want. Use the Kilowattrel, draw yourself more cards, use Belly Bolt. Again, it could be the way to do it, but I think that the problem is, like, the more energy you play, the less consistent your deck gets. So it would be pretty rough, but I think Iono is going to be a fun kind of like meme deck to be able to play. The next card of actual value, and one of the few good Lily's cards, is Lily's Clefairy EX, and I think this card is really, really, really good. The ability Fairy Zone is great. It brings back fairy cards, essentially, which we should have back as their own card type. I get why they won't do that, but I'd really appreciate if they did, rather than just lumping it back into Psychic. And what it does is that it makes the weakness of Dragon Pokemon turn to a Psychic weakness, and this is really good because Dracopult is, without this card, would just run rampant on the ladder and on the format as a whole. But with this card, I don't think that will be the case anymore, because Guardy can play this card really, really effectively. And so you're going to be able to just kind of throw this down, be really, really frustrating. It's a basic, so you don't even have to evolve it. You don't have to, like, so that you can just nest ball it right out and be really, really, really strong right off the bat. And it doesn't... One of the other things, too, is that it's just your opponent's dragon Pokemon, which means you're going to be able to hit the Dreepies and the Dracloaks and stuff like that for weakness as well, which makes your early game really, really good against the Dragapult deck, let alone when it evolves, you're going to be able to just go Drifloon, knock it out super easily. So Guardy's going to see this card get a whole lot of play, and I think a bunch of other decks will as well. Even just teching it if you're already playing Psychic Energy or something like, or even if you just want to run one, like 2 Psychic Energy, just to have this card in play, because it does do 20 damage, and this attack does 20 more damage for each benched Pokemon. So if your opponent's playing Dragapult, like, you may just want to run, like, 2 Psychic Energies in your deck and a copy of this if you have the space for it, just to kind of set up as a Dragapult counter. Mr. Mime doesn't really do anything. You could be funny and mimic, where you just shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw a card till you like match your opponent. That could be okay, but I don't think you'd ever play it. Banette, really cool. Oh, by the way, you should I keep forgetting to do this. With Clefairy, I would get 4 of these. Do you need 4? No, but you should probably have them, because I feel like this card is a card that will be very, very prevalent for a long time. And so it's just going to be better to have them rather than not. If you're looking on pure just like what you need, I would say 2. But I would recommend picking up 4, because it's a card that's probably going to go up in value over time. Banette, this card is really interesting, but I don't know how good it will actually be. Outside of just playing like a random, rogue strategy. And because it has the attack for Cursed Speech, where your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into their deck, you can combine this with Xerosic and some other cards like Hand Trimmer or whatever. Make it so your opponent really has no hand ever to work with. I think the best way to do this would be coming off of like Badoo, but the main problem is that you're not doing damage. And so if your opponent does have a attacker made, it doesn't really matter if they don't have a hand, because you're not KOing anything anyway. You'd have to play it with like a stronger attacker in the bench and move that in. So I don't know. I'm not super excited about it, but it could be good. Who knows? The Metagross is interesting. I wouldn't pick any of these up, by the way. I just think it's an interesting card. Metagross is interesting as another rogue deck potential, where it has the Joint Beam for 130 damage. If your Beldum and Metang are on the bench, then the attack does 150 more, which is nice. You're doing 280 for this, and you're probably going to have those things anyway, because you're like looking to build into another Metagross. I think it's an interesting kind of meme rogue deck. Again, you can play it with like Max Belt to just be one-shotting things, and on a single prize deck, that's not too bad, especially for only 2 Psychic Energy. That's not going to be terrible to be able to make consistently, so yeah, I like it. And Sigilyph, I think this card is okay. I would have just one of it in the deck, just for like niche random scenarios where your prize mapping went weird and you're just stuck on one prize, because it does have the victory symbol attack, where if you use this attack when you have only 1 prize card remaining, you win the game. It's a nice way to just kind of close things out. I feel like sometimes you get into a weird situation where there's just like 1 prize left and you gotta like look for a thing to boss or whatever, and it just like gives you that extra option, so you may as well play 1 of in the deck. I think it's fine. Lily's Ribombee, this card for control decks is going to be really, really annoying. Outside of that, I don't think it really matters. It does have the Inviting Wink ability, where when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand and put any number of basic Pokemon you find there onto the bench. It's kind of like Erica's Invitation, except you don't get the switch. For control decks, I think this will be interesting, because you can like just bog up your opponent's bench, but outside of that, I don't think it'll be all that useful. Where I do see it being useful, though, is like if you're playing like mill style decks. So think of something like Ancient Box, or not Ancient Box, sorry, Great Tusk Mill. Then you just want to go like 4 accompanying Flute and Lily's Ribombee. Just try to fill up the bench with as many like random cards as possible and just kind of work off that. moving forward, I don't think any of these other cards are really all that good. Oh, finally getting to my boy Mamoswine. Mamoswine, great. I love this card. I think this card's going to be way better than people are anticipating, where it does have the Mammoth Carry ability, where once during your turn, you can search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. Then its attack for 2 fighting energy is the Rumbling March, where it does 180 damage, and then this attack does 40 more damage for each Stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. This is really, really good, because as long as you have Pidgeot out, you can Pidgeot into your Rare Candy, and then you use Mamoswine to find yourself the other Stage 2, and so then you're just looping Pokemon over and over and over again. You can do a ton of damage, one-shotting pretty much everything in the game if you have a full bench established, and even if you don't, you can just do incredible damage. I think Mamoswine's really, really interesting. It's 340 HP, so it does survive a Charizard that's non-buffed, even if you're only on a single prize card. So I think it's really, really good. I think this card's interesting. Its weakness to grass isn't that bad, because we don't really have any good grass attackers in the game right now, outside of Ogerpon. And I think, yeah, like I don't think it's gonna matter all that much. So I would be on the lookout for Mamoswine. I'm gonna pick myself up a couple copies of this, probably 3, just down the line, 3, but you could get 4. Going on, there's also the Lycanroc. So this is an interesting card. I don't know how good it'll actually be, but it definitely is a weird kind of clapback rogue deck that I'm definitely going to be trying out, because it has the Entangling Spikes ability, where when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you can attach up to 2 Spike Energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. We will be covering Spike Energy later on, but it's kind of interesting. And then you have the Grabbing Fangs attack for 3 colorless, which is really easy to get because you're going to be attaching 2 of the Spike Energy and then just attaching 1 from your hand. Then you do 40 damage, and then this attack does 40 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. There's going to be ways to buff this up and make it a little bit more consistent to be able to get damage off, and as well as the fact that you will have the Spike Energies. So if your opponent attacks into one of your Lycanroc, they're going to take damage, then you bring in a new one, you power it up. So as long as you can loop Lycanrocs, I think it would be pretty good. Hop Sandaconda doesn't really matter. The only thing that you could maybe use it for is the 30 damage kind of retreat lock, if you were looking to do something with that, but I don't think that's very good. A card I do think is actually pretty good, and I don't really see people talking about it that much, and that's this Toedscruel. Toedscruel is really good. I think the deck itself is very powerful, and having this as an addition is really nice, where it has the Forest Path ability, where as long as this Pokemon is on your bench and your active Pokemon's retreat, it cost is 2 less, which is really, really good. It kind of makes it so you have free retreat in the Toedscruel deck at all times, and I think this card is just genuinely splashable as just a card to give you free retreat for a lot of decks that have 2 retreat costs on them, so I think it's pretty good. And as well, right now, if you don't need the Slime Mold Colony Toedscruel as the game, because like Pokestop is going away and things like that, so it's going to be less commonly needed. Obviously right now, like Goldango's still around, so you're going to want it for the Spirit Energy retrievals, but if that card becomes less kind of usable, you can always just slot this one in its place, so I think that's very good and helps that deck out a lot. The rest of these cards don't really matter. Getting to the Tyranitar, I like this card a lot, but I don't know how good it'll be. I'm interested to see it used with the Excelgor, because you do have the Daunting Gaze, where while this Pokemon is in your active, your opponent cannot play item cards from their hand, and when you do choose to attack with it with the Crackling Stomp, you do 150 damage, which is reasonable damage, and you discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, so you're discarding them and you're item locking them. You can use the Excelgor to poison them and confuse them before you come in and item lock. You can run this Whip-a-Doo. So I think this card has potential. I don't know how good it'll really be, but I do think that it has some options to it for sure. Ends Purloin, I like this card a lot. Again, we just want as many things that we can use Zoroark for as possible, and Ends Purloin isn't really a bad option because it does 30 damage for 2 energy, and which is knocking out like Badoo and stuff like that, which is okay. But really what it's nice for is your opponent reveals their hand, and you put a card you find there at the bottom of their deck. This is really nice for a late game play with your End Zoroark, or even an early game play if you drop a, like, let's say a Judge, and then you attack with End Zoroark using the Purloin. You do 30 damage to something because it's just kind of like to pass the turn, but you can find something really useful and just throw it at the bottom of their deck. Let's say that they brick after, but like one of the cards they get off the Judge is like a research. You can just throw that to the bottom of their deck. It'd be really, really frustrating. So I think it's good and will definitely come up. End Zoroark is really great, so I'd probably get like 2 of these Ends Purloin. You're going to want 4 of the End Zoroark. You'd probably be fine with 3, but I always pick up 4 for really, you know, really, really good cards like this. It has the trade ability, which we've seen a million times, pretty much refinement. You must discard a card from your hand in order to use this ability. During your turn, you may draw 2 cards. Really, really good. Just gives you a solid, consistent draw engine. And then for 2 Dark Energy, which is going to be really easy to power up overall. We're not going to really have to worry about that too much. We do get the Night Joker attack, where you choose one of your benched ends Pokemon. The attack is used as this attack. So again, we're going to be able to snipe with the Darmanitan. We can just get the Purloin out really easily. So it's pretty nice to have overall, I would say. It's probably the best of all of the trainer cards right now, but I do have some high hopes for the Hop deck as well. I don't think the rest of these are really all that great. Magearna, I think, could be interesting. It does have the ability Auto Heal, where as long as this Pokemon is in your active, whenever you attach a energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 90 damage from that Pokemon. This is really nice. Just to get a free 90 damage heal every turn is really nice. So, and especially too, you could just have this in the active, put a rescue board on it, retreat it around as you want. I think there's definitely things you can do with it, as well as the Spike Draw. If it did 10 more damage, that would be great, because then it'd be a really solid thing, like a really solid answer to Badoo. Plus, it gives you 2 cards. I think this card could be fine as a splashable one-of. I'd probably pick up 1 or 2 copies of it, personally. Getting to Hop's Zacian EX, this card is really, really, really cool. I think it's going to see a lot of play, where it does have the Close Cleave attack, where it does 30 damage. This attack does 30 more, 30 damage, and then this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you're able to do a little bit damage, but really what it's nice for is that, one, you can run this inside of your Archaludon decks and have an answer for Cornerstone, which is really important. It gives you kind of an out to a couple different things, so it's very good as just to splash in your Archaludon. You also have the Brave Slash for 240 damage during your next turn. This Pokemon cannot use Brave Slash, but that's fine. We're going to be able to buff that 30 damage, though, a lot. We're not really too worried about the low damage from that. Since for a single energy, we're going to look at some other Hops cards later on that are going to make this attack kind of do crazy damage. Going into Salamence, I think this card is okay, but not great. I like the art, though, where it has the Wide Blast attack. This attack does 50 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is nice, just spread damage. I don't know if there's anything that can really take tons of advantage of it right now, but you could be really annoying, run this with like Frostlass, just try to get like 2 or 3 of these off throughout the course of a game and just kind of win that way. You do have the Dragon's Impact attack as well, where you do 300 damage and then discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. Could be used. I'm not really sure if it will be. Ends Reshiram. This card's also very good, where it has the Powerful Rage, where you do 20 damage, and this attack does 20 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. This is really, really nice. It makes it so people are scared to attack your Zoroark, because if you just play Ends Reshiram out, then if they didn't one-shot your Zoroark, you're pretty much guaranteed to one-shot them back, which is really good. And then it also gives you the Victorious Flame attack, so it's just a little bit of consistent damage. It pretty much 2-shots everything in the game. So if you have literally nothing else you can use, you can just go and, you know, drop 170, be okay, pass turn. If they attack into you and don't one-shot you, then you get your Rage attack off. So I think it's really good. Definitely going to run 2 or 3 of these in the Ends deck as well. Hop Snorlax, I like this card a lot. Definitely going to be picking up a couple of these. The ability Big Belly. One, I love Snorlax. One of my favorite Pokemon of all time. Actually is my favorite Pokemon of all time. So very excited to see that it's getting some love. But it does have the Big Belly ability. This attack on your Hops Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So already our Zacian is doing 60 damage and then 30 to the bench for 1 energy. That's very, very good. Unfortunately, the attack doesn't stack, but we're not really that worried about it. And then we're doing 140 for 3 colorless, or in this case, 170. If we choose to attack with it, we won't be, but, you know, that's kind of its own thing. Dunsparce is interesting. We'll probably be seeing a lot more of the Dunsparce draw engine, specifically because of the fact that it's really the best draw engine in the game post-rotation. Even though it's not great, it's just the best of a bad situation outside of Noctowl, but not every deck can use or wants to utilize Noctowl. So Dunsparce will be kind of what it is. But that being said, Dunsparce is a pretty interesting card because it does get around a couple different things. And then it does have the Adversity Tail, which does 60 times damage, where this attack does 60 more damage for each of your opponent's EX Pokemon. This is actually really good into wall decks. It gets around Milotic, it gets around Cornerstone, it gets around the Farigarath as well. If your opponent has multiple walls out, then you're two-shotting, and that's before they are able to two-shot you, which is like pretty nice. And then you do have the Drill Break attack as well, which is 150 damage, and then this attack's damage isn't affected by any effects of your opponent's active Pokemon. So it's pretty good, helps you kind of get around some wall decks for the most part. Moving on, we have Noivern. I think this card is interesting, where you have the Tuning Echo ability. If you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost, and then the Howling Panic, or the Panic Howl rather, where it does 110 damage and your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. This is kind of cool because you can do like a weird meme deck where like you use this with Judge and you just start being really frustrating. Is it good? Probably not, but it is kind of fun. Going forward, we have the Corviknight and all that for Hop, but it's not really worth playing. Hop's Dub Wall is interesting. We haven't seen it played too much in City Leagues. I think it'll be pretty good just to have at least a one of in your deck, because it does have the Challenging Horn, where when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active slot. So it just gives you an extra boss in the deck, and so I feel like there's no reason to not use it. You may as well have at least one copy in your deck. Just having that extra boss option, not needing to play a supporter for that turn, I think is really good. So you may as well have it. And then Hop's Cramorant. This is another reason why I think Hop's Double is going to be really, really good. Hop's Cramorant is a dumb card, and it's really powerful. It has the Fickle Spit, which does 120 damage, and then if your opponent doesn't have exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does nothing. But the benefit is that you're a single prizer, so if your opponent has 4 prize cards remaining and you attack and you knock something out, that's great. They attack into you, knock you out. You're still at 3. Your opponent's still at 3 prize cards, so you get to do it all over again. So the main thing is like you can use your Zacian. Your Zacian gets knocked out. You bring up a Cramorant. You take a knockout. They knock out your Cramorant. You bring in another one. You take another knockout, and they're at 3. They knock out another Cramorant. So it's like really, really good. The other thing too is like you're going to be able to boost this damage up so much, where you're doing 120 damage, but it's really 150 damage because you're going to have Snorlax, and there's even other ways to buff this as well. So Cramorant going to be very, very good in the Hops deck. I would play 2 to 3. Probably 3 because you don't want to miss one, because we don't have a way to get it out of the prize cards efficiently anymore. This card's bad. A whole bunch of Black Belts training cards that we've already seen, which is cool, but I don't really think any of these arts are that good. Brock Scouting is interesting. I think it will be good just because it has uses for multiple times in the game. where you search your deck for one basic or two basic Pokemon, reveal them, put them in your hand, shuffle your deck. This is nice for just early game, get your stuff out. It's not super impactful, but it could be nice, especially too because it's just basic Pokemon. It doesn't mean it's not non-EXs. It's not under a certain HP total, so it's just two basics, which can get you a lot of different stuff. Even something like grabbing yourself, like let's say Squawkabilly and an Ogerpon, for example. Like it can get you both of those, which is really nice. And then also it has a secondary effect where you search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, which is really nice because especially too in the late game, you may be looking for an evolution or a basic and you're not stuck with one or the other, in the sense where this card isn't just, you know, two basics and then in the late game it's worthless. It has multiple purposes as the game goes on, so I think it is pretty good. Hop's Bag is another really good card. Oh, by the way, I would get 4 of these, just so that way you have them. Hop's Bag is pretty good. You get to search your deck for up to 2 Hops Pokemon, put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. This is really good to have as an item card because it means that you just get your Zacian and Snorlax right away, or your like double Cramorant right away. So Hop's Bag, super broken. Hop's Choice Band, they wanted Hop to be so good, and it's so crazy to me that this is like the trainer they picked to be so good. Hop's Choice Band, when the Hops Pokemon this card is attached to uses an attack, it costs 1 colorless energy less. So your Cramorant is also now attacking for free, and it does 30 more damage. So you're plussing 60 damage to your Cramorant, or you're plussing 60 damage to your Zacian. So that Zacian's now hitting for 90 attack to the active, 30 to the bench, if you have a Snorlax in play, which is super powerful. And then we have the Irish Fighting Spirit. I think this card is good. You discard a card from your hand, and if you do, you draw cards until you have 6 cards in hand. This is pretty nice. It stops you from having to research or go Iono if your hand is low and you have things you don't want to just like get rid of. It's also nice because like it doesn't make you have to reshuffle your opponent's hand like something like Iono, and it stops you from having to discard your whole hand like research would. So I think it's like a middle ground between the two. I wouldn't like I'd get 4 of them so you own them, but I wouldn't run 4 in a deck, probably just like 1 or 2. This Stadium Lavinica, I think I said that right. Once during each player's turn, you can put up to 2 basic electric energy cards from your discard pile to your hand. That's going to be good for Iono and Miraidon and a couple other decks, but mostly those 2, and I think it's really strong. So definitely pick up a couple copies of this. Lily's Pearl is really good. If the Lily's Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from your opponent's attack, they take 1 fewer prize card. This is really good because you just throw this on Clefairy. It makes Dracopult even worse into that matchup and just makes Guardy even stronger because you're turning your Clefairy into a 1-prizer. So there's even less 2-prize liabilities. So Lily's Pearl, very good. I'd pick those up for sure. End's Castle. Each End's Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent, have no retreat cost. Very good for the End's deck. I'd pick up a couple of those. End's PP Up. You know, pause. Attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched End's Pokemon. This is really good, especially in combination, because it essentially is just going to be your Dark Patch for your Zoroark. So you can just play these down. It functions like Dark Patch. You have End's Castle, so it doesn't matter that it's on the bench. You're going to be able to move it around. So I think it's very good. Again, just giving more power to the End's deck. Postwick, I think is how it's supposed to be said. This is just another card that just makes Hop stronger. The attacks of Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage. Again, they're just buffing damage all over in the Hop's deck. So now we're doing 120 with Zacian for a single energy, and we're doing, I don't even remember how much with Cramorant. I think we're hitting like 210 now from Cramorant, which is insane to do on a single prizer. And this isn't even accounting for like other ways that we could in theory buff it. Instead of running like the Hops Choice Band, we could throw like a Max Belt on there for an additional set of damage. Like, it's just so strong. Research, don't care about that. Redeem Ticket. I think this card's cool. After counting your prize cards, shuffle them, put them into the bottom of your deck, then take the top many cards of your deck on the top, put them face down. This is nice because, like, if you nest ball at the start of the game, you find that, like, a bunch of your stuff is prize that you really need, then you could always, you know, reshuffle your prize cards, essentially. So I think that's fun. Could be good, could be bad. One of it is fine, probably. Ruffian, I don't think it's very good, but could be good later. Super Potion, doesn't matter. And finally, the Spike Energy. Spike Energy is really, really cool. I love seeing unique special energies, and so this is just kind of another one of those. It does provide a colorless energy, and if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, is damaged by your opponent's attack, put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So again, with Lycanroc, that means you're doing 40 damage automatically when they attack into you, 60 damage if they attack into you, and you have 3 Spike Energies attached. So you're going to be able to loop those, do a bunch of damage. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting card. I think the Lycanroc build is very, very interesting. I think N and Hop will be the best cards or best decks coming out of the set, and I also think there is room for Mamoswine as well as for the Dunsparce EX. So yeah, those would be kind of the biggest cards, in my opinion, to come out of the set. Obviously, N Zoroark is the kind of big #1 card to come out of the set, is alongside Lily's Clefable, but my man Mamoswine is who I'm really here for. But yeah, that's just about it for the list, guys. Or not the list, kind of went on all about there. For the set review, hopefully you guys learned something, and hopefully you have a better idea of what to kind of look out for when the new set comes. I tried to make this as short as I can, but I also want to be able to give my thoughts and opinions, so even no matter how short I try to make these, they always go on for a while. But if you made it all the way to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys all in the next video. And yeah, peace.